and we'll move here full time when Stevie graduates.
No. All right. We'll formally start this. You know,
Yeah.
Mike Greenberg, 18 years. He hosted the institution. Mike now hosts his own show, Get Up, 8 to 10 on ESPN. It's 10 to 12 on ESPN2. And then he's back on the radio with Greeny, 12 to 2. So that is 6 straight hours, my friend. Where do you find the caffeine and the energy for all that?
You know, honestly, I love how busy people perceive me to be. So keep this between us. But, you know, I had for 20 years a job that ended at 10 o'clock in the morning, which is how I managed to write a bunch of books, shave 16 shots off of my handicap in golf. And when they still wanted me to, pick my kids up at school literally every single day. So adding a little bit to my schedule is not so bad. Instead of getting done with my work day at 10 a.m., I now get done at 2 p.m. So let's keep that between us. But generally, I'm not quite as overtaxed as you make it sound. But I would like the people I work for to continue to believe it.
Yeah, I think they could add another show in the mid-afternoon. You need some more airtime. You really do need some more airtime. So tell me, when did you move to Westport and why did you move here, although you're in New York as we speak?
I'm in New York right now, but we've lived in Westport since 1998. So when I first, I was living in Chicago. I went to college in the suburbs of Chicago, and then I wound up getting a job in Chicago and living there for another 7 years. And it was during that time that I met and married my wife. So she is a Chicago girl, born and raised. And when I got hired at ESPN to come work in Bristol, Connecticut, I moved up there, up to that part of the state. I lived up in West Hartford, and that area, much nearer to Bristol. And my wife stayed in Chicago. She wasn't my wife at the time. She was just my girlfriend. One thing leads to another. This is a long answer to a short question. She came to live in Connecticut. She got a job in White Plains. She was a marketing executive at Starwood Hotels when it was based in White Plains. And we needed a location that was sort of centrally located. When I grew up in New York City, and there was a girl whom I aspired to date who never gave me the time of day, who had a weekend home in Westport, Connecticut. Now, again, I was never invited to this home. I never went to the home. I had never set foot in Westport, Connecticut. But I always had this idea in my head that Westport is a place for fabulous people because this fabulous girl was here all the time and talked about it a lot. So I said to Stace, let's go look at Westport, Connecticut. And we wound up renting an apartment right off exit 17. And we lived there for a year and a half until we were about to have our first child. Our daughter, Nikki, was born in 2000. And we bought our first house that summer and have been delightfully there ever since. It has been a fabulous place to raise our kids. It's been a fabulous place to live. We've become very dug into the community. And we love it, and I will always love it. It will always be where my kids grew up, and it'll always be home to me. And you know, we will when we're somewhat startlingly close to being empty nesters. And when that time comes, we'll start spending a lot more time in the city because that's where I work, and it's just a little bit easier. But we will never not have at least one foot in Westport because it's a place that I think both of us, our entire family, loves.
You'll remain a homeowner. And did you ever see the girl that you didn't get, thankfully?
I did not. No, I have no idea whatever became of her. Bear in mind, this was 1985.
All right.
That we're talking about. So I don't know whatever became of her, but I do know that I always had this romantic notion that Westport, Connecticut was this fabulous place. And I will say when I first arrived, it didn't look anything like I imagined it looking. And of course, it doesn't look anything like it looked 22 years ago anymore either. But I think that having seen the resurgence, look, there are always unintended consequences, for lack of a better word, of circumstances. And obviously the pandemic has been just an unimaginable tragedy in every conceivable way. But to see what I think is going to be the beginning of a revitalization of the community in Westport and so much of suburban Connecticut will be one, I think, not nice thing. I'm not sure if the right way to put this is one good thing that will come from it. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that because, I have been saddened to walk down Main Street, for example, that I remember so vividly in the early 2000s when every single storefront was
Uh,
busy and there was stuff going on and people walking around, and it was just a very fun, vibrant, busy place to be. And I hope that it becomes that again.
it does make me sad as well, walking down that street and seeing it about 50% full. Thankfully, Gigi and Joe and some of the new businesses that are popping up, hopefully there's more of that. But it has saddened me and saddened a lot of people in this town. I think it's okay to say we need something good to come of all this bad. So hopefully that is the one thing. Now you leave town about the same time two of your coworkers come to town. A morning fixture with you is Dan Orlovsky, who was the first guest here with us, and Jay Williams have both moved to town. Is that on you? Did you get a finder's fee?
And Ryan Smith as well. Ryan Smith, who was our terrific legal analyst and now an anchor. He was a legal analyst for first for Good Morning America, then for ABC News and ESPN. And now he has transitioned to being an ESPN anchor, and he hosts Outside the Lines and is just terrific and couldn't be a more super smart or more of a terrific guy, and has young twins. So now just getting dug into the community. Yes. And Jay Will and Dan Orlovsky, and it's just been fabulous. The president of ESPN now has relocated to our town as well. And Westport's just a fabulous place to live. And for ESPN people, it's particularly good because if you were to draw a straight line from ESPN headquarters in Bristol, Connecticut, to Midtown Manhattan, the exact dividing point would be Westport. It's exactly the same drive. You know, when I moved my show from Bristol to the city, I had the same exact commute. It didn't change at all. And so I think it's for ESPN people, I think it's great that way, because if they need to be in Bristol, it's accessible. If they need to be in the city, it's accessible. And that is one of the many terrific things about living there.
And we should leave out our good friend Jeremy Schaap, who also lives.
But he's born and raised. Now, Jeremy's been there far longer than
Right.
certainly any of the rest of us. I did not grow up in Westport. Jeremy did. And Jeremy, and another ESPN anchor who grew up in Westport is David Lloyd. He actually grew up on the same street where his mother lives on my street. I see his mother, Ann, all the time. And David, it's funny because when you talk to David or Jeremy, people who, so again, it's just generations of history with the town. They remember it so differently than I remember it in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Like, they still refer to Mitchell's as Ed Mitchell's. But to them, it will always be Ed Mitchell's, which I guess is what it was called. I've seen the sign, obviously, in Mitchell's. But so they have a whole different record. They'll always say, well, Greeny, remember when the movie theater was on Main Street? And I always say, no, I don't. There was never a movie theater on Main Street when I lived in Westport. But apparently, where the Tiffany is now, there was a movie theater. And so it's just, it's the kind of town that people have this connection to. And that's one of the nice things about living in a small town, is that everyone has, in New York City, which is where I grew up, or Chicago, where my wife grew up. These are huge, sprawling metropolises where everyone has just a little tiny corner of it that they call home. But with Westport, all of it, is home. And so that's one of the many nice things about it.
And what will you miss about it now that you're a New Yorker again?
Well, I don't want to make it seem like I'm leaving. I mean, I'm not leaving. I just won't be there every single day. I have been commuting. Like I say, in 1998, I moved to Westport. I had a 54-mile commute to work every single day until 2018, when I moved to Manhattan and my show to Manhattan. And now I have a 51-mile commute every day. So just once, I am looking forward to having a commute after 23 years of having a commute that is like 10 minutes in a cab. So that's the primary thing. So, but we will still have a place. I would envision being there on weekends, and maybe a lot more than that in the summers.
Yeah.
But what I would miss about it daily, in all honesty, is I have become, I love golf. I'm addicted to golf. And my favorite thing about golf is all of the time that you spend outside, is the way the air smells and the way the trees feel and the way the grass smells and the way it all looks. I love just opening the door to my house and walking out. I take long walks every day. Actually, during the pandemic, our daughter Nikki was home from college, and she was pretty cranky about it. But the one wonderful thing that came from her being home was that she and I took walk literally every day. I'm talking about 5-mile walks. And there were so many people that we would encounter because everyone was doing that, of course, particularly back in April and May when nothing was open. You really couldn't do practically anything else. And we connected with a lot of neighbors. Like there were a lot of people I had never seen before in my entire life, because in Westport, generally you get into your car and you drive away from your house, and the people who don't live within like earshot of you, you don't necessarily know. So that connected me to our neighborhood a little bit more. So that I'll miss. I will miss the trees and the leaves and the grass and all of that. But again, I will never be that far away, and hopefully we'll still be there on a very regular basis.
I'm sure we'll still see it Rolling Hills on occasion. So let's talk about what happened there when you moved to Manhattan with the show Get Up. And by the way, it's outstanding. I watch the show just about every morning and check with Orlovsky some of the unique breakdowns that he does on the show. He's a beauty. 18 years, though, you did Mike and Mike, longer than I've been married. What to you said, all right, it's time has passed. It's time to do something new?
Well, they came to me and said they wanted to do something new in the mornings on ESPN TV, and they wanted me to host it. And it was a difficult decision because obviously that had been and will always be an incredibly important and wonderful part of my life. But I did look at, I was turning 50. I was approaching, becoming an empty nester. And I was starting to look at whether or not there was going to be a meaningful next chapter to my professional life. And I thought, if I'm going to do that, if there's going to be one, this is the time. The time to do it in my life is now. And so it was a difficult thing to do, but I never regretted it. And I will say that even through whatever were the most difficult times of the early bumps along the road that we had with Get Up, I feel 15 years younger than I felt 5 years ago, because I feel invigorated. It is a new challenge. I am working as hard as I can possibly work, as opposed to, I think if you do, I guess I can't speak for others, but I can speak for myself. Doing the same job every single day for 18 years, no matter how hard you try to remain motivated, I found it difficult not every once in a while to just say, you know what, it'll be fine. Like, instead of setting aside the hour in the evening that I should to go over notes and go through all the internet and see what's happening everywhere, there were too many times I said to myself, nah, it'll be fine. I'll be fine tomorrow. And I was too young to live that way. I was too young to sort of put it on cruise control. And so all of those factors sort of came together, and, it's obviously worked out really well now. I'm really happy being here in the city. I'm really happy with the new show. I'm happy with so many of the new people like Orlovsky that I get to work with. I consider him the first of my many television nephews that I have, sort of developed and worked with, and they've been wonderful to my career. And I hope that I've been able to help them. So in every single way, it's just been terrific.
Is he really the Boy Scout that he comes across? I mean, he strikes me as just like squeaky clean. There's got to be an evil dark side to Westport.
Well, he doesn't curse at all.
Come on, man.
Not at all. So I have seen him hit a terrible, I have played a bunch of golf with him. He's a great, great golf partner. He's fun to play with. He hits it a ton. It's probably about a 5 or a 6. And he will hit an errant shot. You hit one of those big death slices. If you know Rolling Hills Country Club, then you know when you're standing on that 4th tee box and you slice it, you know it's going to wind up on the 5th fairway, and you got to yell 4 and hope you didn't just kill somebody. And Orlovsky will yell, "What the fudge?" And that takes some getting used to. Like it doesn't seem possible, but he does not curse and at all. And he is absolutely just the ultimate sweetheart of a man. He's got beautiful, I don't know if you've met his family, but his wife is lovely and the beautiful kids. And Westport was so perfect for him. I mean, I think it is going to be such a perfect place for someone like him to live and to raise his kids. It's exactly the right place for him to be at this time in his life.
What do you do when you hit a shanked shot?
I don't know that my language is not quite as suitable for a family show such as this. I've tried very hard to maintain an even, like Bob Rotella says, that the final piece of a good pre-shot routine is acceptance. So I'm working very hard on that, but I do not always succeed.
I do not either. So when people see you out, is it always just sports talk? Is it always Jets talk? Does it get annoying? Does it get frustrating? Do you wish they'd ask you about the debate or the president having COVID?
No,
Or
I'm much
just happy
happier.
where you are?
I'm much happier even talking about the Jets than I am talking about the debate or the election. But in all honesty, it not only doesn't it bother me, but I, I appreciate it so much, and I'll tell you why. I think for some of us, for whom some level of success and notoriety come a little bit later in life, there is a different appreciation for it. Like the people I cover generally become famous when they're 22 at the oldest.
Yeah, early 20s. Yeah.
The basketball players are celebrities, in their communities these days. There are kids in high school, basketball players in high school who have 2-3 million followers on Instagram. So no one gave a damn what I thought about sports until I was in my late 30s. And that's a very different way. So I remember working in this business at a time when no one knew who I was and no one cared. And so I know that at that time I dreamt of the day that people, if I was walking down the street, would yell, "Hey, Greeny, love the show." And so the fact that people do that now is wonderful. And I hope it never stops. And I most certainly don't. I am most certainly not bothered by it. I'm not a rock star. I'm not I don't need security to go places. I'm almost never disturbed by people to the point that it interferes with anything I'm otherwise trying to do. So it is. I would say that I have a great appreciation for it. And I've seen, what enormous celebrity is like. I traveled with Michael Jordan for 4 years. Michael Jordan couldn't go anywhere without having to arrange security ahead of time, and he couldn't go to the movies with his kids. He couldn't live his life that way. I don't think I would want that, but that's not my life at all.
But you're downplaying this to somewhat. I mean, you're one of the 3 or 4 faces of ESPN. That must be a burden in some way.
I wouldn't call it a burden. I mean, yes, my face has been on television for a very long time with my name under it. And the show that I used to host, as you said, was called Mike and Mike. So pretty much everyone knows my name. But so when I walk by, like, "Hey, Greeny, how are you?" I get, restaurants and wherever it is, walking down Main Street or whatever, but never to the point that it's bothersome. I mean, I really not. I would not describe it as a burden. I mean, there are burdens in my job, but they are not. That's not what they are. The burden in the job is the pressure of every single day, of being great every single day, of the fact that the competition has never been more significant than it is now. The fact that we're trying to do. I just spent 4 months hosting a daily sports talk show during a pandemic when there were no sports being played. Now we're trying to do sports talk at a time when in the same week we had the Stanley Cup finals, we had the NBA finals, we have baseball's playoffs, and we have NFL and college football going at the same time. Oh, by the way, plus the French Open. Oh, by the way, plus the WNBA and the bubble. Oh, plus all these things. We went from nothing. We went from 0 to 160 in the blink of an eye. Oh, by the way, we're doing this in the backdrop of a pandemic that is ongoing, and the continuing issues of the divisiveness of our society with issues involving the election and everything else. So those are the challenges, is when you are considered to be one of the faces of the network, making sure that you are handling all of that appropriately, because I'm very cognizant of the fact that the things I do and the things I say are going to be, even if I don't mean them to be, are going to be interpreted by people as me speaking on behalf of ESPN. And my Twitter handle, my Instagram handle is ESPN Greeny. And ESPN is intrinsically connected to my name. But I know for sure that when I die in my obituary, the first thing it's going to say is Mike Greenberg, who worked at ESPN for all of these years. And I'm very proud of that. I take great pride in our success as a network. So that's where the burden comes from. Those are the hard parts. People walking up and telling me they enjoy the show, frankly, is the best part of my job.
I was fanboy once, and the one time I saw you in this town, I think I said that at the golf course. You mentioned sports in this COVID era and everything coming together at once. The surprising thing for me has been the ratings, because we all sat there and said, God, I need sports back. We were watching Joe Buck narrate kids fighting and a BBC broadcaster having narrating dogs fighting. And here they are, and the ratings are down across the board. And the NBA Finals is at an all-time low. It is stunning to me as a lifelong sports fan. What do you make of it?
Well, I think there are a million different explanations for the various different pieces of that. With regard to the NBA Finals are not supposed to be played in October, at a time when so much of the attention in sports is dedicated to football. So it is not insulting the NBA as an entertainment vehicle to say it isn't as popular as football. That would be like this. That would be the equivalent to say something is not as popular as pro football would be like suggesting someone isn't rich because they don't have as much money as Jeff Bezos. You can be very rich without having $200 billion. So the NBA is not as popular as pro football. Everything gets swallowed up in the wake of pro football. And so I think that's the biggest factor that is going on with the NBA is that these playoffs in a bubble. I mean, the circumstances, I candidly, I prefer to focus on what I think is the enormity of the accomplishment of pulling this thing off in the first place. I mean, the fact that they're going to get to the finish line here in the next, couple of days of something that was by no means assured to them, the achievement of putting everybody into this bubble, of pulling it off with basically no positive tests, of no one's health being risked, jeopardized is the word I was looking for, of providing entertainment for the millions of people who do want it, who have enjoyed it, people like you and like me who watch it. So I think that it has been an enormous success story that they have managed to come back and do this, because that was by no means guaranteed to us. Oh. The ratings are down. I don't have much better explanations for that than it's happening during the football season, which is always going to swallow up a lot of attention in the sports world. And B, it's happening against the backdrop of a presidential election that I think has everyone paying attention to that. Like I know, for example, Friday night, which was when game 2 of the NBA Finals was being played, I was watching CNN for most of that night because the president was being helicoptered to Walter Reed Medical Center. And there was a real lack of clarity as to what exactly was going on. But it was certainly on the list of possibilities was that the president was like gravely ill with the coronavirus. That's going to be tough to compete with no matter what you are. So I don't know that it is necessarily a sign that anything is terribly wrong as far as the NBA is concerned, as much as it is, these are just crazy, unusual times. And everything is just going to have to sort of settle into a normal place eventually. But I think that's going to take a little bit of time.
I'm obviously a Denver Nuggets fan. I have it here on the shirt and, Von Miller over my shoulder. But I was recently in Denver for a Broncos game and hadn't missed a single minute of the Nuggets. And yet everyone there in Denver told me, we're not watching. We hate to stare at Black Lives Matter on the court and social justice messages on the back of the jersey. Now, I'm just watching the game. I love the game. I love this Nuggets team. You don't think the movement and the way the NBA has presented it isolated them from a fair amount of their fans with the Black Lives Matter right there on the court? People just say, I just want to watch sports. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I don't know how much of a factor that is. But what I would say to that is that the purpose of protest is to not let it be ignored. So what I think is happening with all of this is that the statements that are being made by these players for whom this is the most important thing in their lives, it is more important than winning. If people are saying, I just want to ignore these problems that they're trying so desperately to draw attention to, enough that I'm going to stop watching the games then I guess that's just going to be the trade-off that's going to have to be made. I don't know really what else there is to be said about it. I don't think that the answer is going to be tell the players to stop caring about what they believe is the most important things in the world, in their lives and in the lives of the people in their community. So I know for sure that the dedication to this amongst the players of the National Basketball Association is powerful and meaningful and worthy of, I think, pretty much any sacrifice that results from it. So if people are going to stop watching basketball because they don't like seeing these messages on the court or on the jerseys, I guess that's just what's going to happen, because I don't think under any circumstances that's going to stop.
Oh, that was the similar message. I spoke with Mark Lazary, who's another Westport resident, and he said the same thing. He thinks they'll be rewarded for doing what's right, ultimately. We've had one just quick outbreak of COVID in football with the Titans. Do you think it's manageable to get through the NFL and the college football season?
You know, I have from the beginning of this said to the audience of my shows, I'm going to be optimistic because it costs the same as being pessimistic and it's more fun. So I'm going to say I really hope they can, for two totally disparate but very important reasons. One is professionally, obviously. I work at ESPN. We need these games to be played. The other is that I am a passionate, lifelong sports fan, and when there were no games, I missed them terribly. So I am extremely hopeful that they will find a way to get to the finish line. The realistic part of me says that I think it is very likely that that we will continue to have problems. Almost impossible to imagine that there will not be problems along the way, and that at some point, some more, the word I'm looking for, aggressive form of mitigation will be necessary. Like I keep hearing from people that a bubble is not an option, and it probably is not. It's just there's just too many people involved. It's too complicated. But I think that something more, and I can't tell you what that is, but some more aggressive form of mitigation may wind up becoming necessary. And if that's the case, I think and hope that the NFL and the NFL Players Association will be willing to do that, because I think it is, it is in everyone's best interest, and overwhelmingly so, that they play these games and that they get to a championship. And there are, among other things, billions of dollars at stake. So I would guess they'll find a way to do it. But to just keep doing it the way they're doing it, I think is unlikely.
All right, just about out of time, but I know you said you're the optimist. I'm the pessimist on a lot of things, including our profession. So when young journalists ask me my advice for getting into this field, I often say, don't get into this field. What would you tell young sports journalists that want to be Mike Greenberg someday?
Why do you tell them not to get into the field?
I guess it's been seeing where we're going, fewer jobs, networks like yours cutting back. And if ESPN is cutting back, what does that mean to all the local sports affiliates around the country that used to have 3 and 4 person sports departments that may now have one and may in fact have none? Now, there are a lot of outlets out there. I just don't know that the money and or the jobs will be there. But again, I'm the pessimist. You're the optimist. So what would you tell them?
Well, I think that there are so many. First of all, ESPN, I don't know that we're cutting back as much as we're sort of reacting to the immediacy, the climate of this moment. Yeah. I don't think that's a permanent thing. I would say that, yes, the number of local sports television jobs out there has diminished and will continue to diminish, but that might be matched or overcome by all of the alternative opportunity that exists out there with the whole. It's going to be a whole different broadcast universe that we will be living in the next 2 or 3 generations. So hopefully that will create a lot of opportunity. Here's what I always tell young people. Maybe it's a variation on what you're saying. If you can think of something else to do with your professional life that would thrill you, that will excite you, that will make you feel like going to work every single day is a privilege, then do that. if you feel like there's nothing else in your life that would give you that that rush that this industry can give you, then jump in with both feet and don't give up until you stop trying. Like I do a podcast, and my guest this week is Susan Waldman, and she quoted Ruth Gordon, the actress Ruth Gordon, in the podcast, and it was a fascinating quote. And she said, Ruth Gordon said, "There are no failures on Broadway or in life, just people who gave up too quickly." And that is to say, none of this is guaranteed to happen on your timeline. But if you have the desire to do something in the sports media industry, there is enough opportunity out there that if you're willing to work as hard as you can, or if you're willing to put absolutely everything into it, there will be an opportunity out there for you. And that's what I would tell young people.
My concern is the building blocks, the foundation in which most of us build, local stations and newspapers, are all disappearing. And that is my concern. How do you build? How do you gain that valuable experience? I don't know that those are be there, but I guess there might be other building blocks for young journalists. A dinosaur like me doesn't know what those are. Maybe it's podcasts, maybe it's Instagram Live. I'm not sure. In all your years interviewing the best and the brightest, is there anyone that you still haven't had the opportunity to interview? Who's the one person you really still want to interview?
Wow. I mean, there's a ton of people that I would really like to interview, both inside and outside of sports. The person in sports that I most wanted to talk to, I did. If you had asked me this question last week, I would have said Vin Scully. And then I had Vin Scully on my radio show last Friday. So I would put him I would have put him at the very top of the list within the world of sports. I have found that as I've gotten older, I really enjoy talking to people about sports in a historical way. At some point, the games sort of start to blend together.
And the stats and all that.
There's so much going on a day-to-day basis that talking to people who are involved in it now, while I certainly enjoy it, is not as interesting to me as talking about sports history. So that's what I really do like. So I would love to go back, like, those games that they play about, name your foursome that you would, or who would you most like to have dinner with of three people in history, even if they're no longer alive. Like, there's a ton of people I would love to interview that are no longer alive.
Who you got?
People like, I'd love to go back and talk to Muhammad Ali. I'd love to go back and talk to Jesse Owens. I'd love to talk to people like that. Amongst the people who are still around, I would put Vin Scully right up at the top. That one worked out real well for me.
Least favorite interview?
Oh my goodness. I don't really know that I have that over the years. I'm sure there have been. There were a lot of people when I was out in the field covering sports that could not have been bigger jerks to deal with. We're going a ways back, but I wrote about these in my books, but Steve Buechele was incredibly mean to me. Larry Johnson was incredibly mean. Barry Bonds, George Bell, Bo Jackson. I have a million stories of my days covering sports. Now, almost no one does that anymore because, I host these fancy schmancy shows and I'm just sitting behind a desk wearing fancy clothes, and people who come on usually have their own agenda. So it's rarely like that. But when you walk up to a ball player in a locker room after a game with a tape recorder, that's when you see how people really sometimes behave. And it was in those settings that the more unpleasant things tended to happen.
Kurt Schilling. I got a quick answer for that because he gave me hell just about every time in my Boston days. But David Ortiz and Teddy Bruschi, two of the favorite guys I've ever interviewed in my life. Then as we close, who would you like to see us interview next? You don't have to pick Westport, but you got to pick Weston, Wilton, Darien, Fairfield, Greenwich, or Stamford, but probably Westport's your wheelhouse.
You should do a golf podcast. And you should get my teaching pro, Dan Tisvanis, on. He was just named the Met PGA's Teacher of the Year. He is the best golf teacher I've ever had. He changed my life. I had my index was 20.6 when I first started working with him. It's now 7.1. And as I always tell everyone, he teaches golf in English. He doesn't speak golf. He speaks English. He teaches you the game in ways that anyone can understand. He doesn't talk about swing planes. He talks about things that anyone can understand, and you should do like weekly golf tips or whatever it is, because golf is there's a resurgence of popularity amongst golfers because during the pandemic there's been almost nothing else to do, and golf is literally my number one favorite passion in life. Outside of my family, golf is the most important thing in my world, and Dan is the best. So he would make a great interview, and you could ask him golf questions, and he would be terrific with them. And he's as local as can be.
I'm going to have to get his contact. Orlovsky wanted me to ask you what course or what hole would you play anywhere in the world?
Well, you know, the way we talk about this, my nephew and I were having a conversation. I'm a member of Bayonne Golf Club in Bayonne, New Jersey, which is a golf course that I love. And as we were walking down, the 14th hole is a downhill par 3. And as we were walking to the green from the tee, I said to him, you know, someday you're going to be sprinkling my ashes here. So that's, of all the non-super famous holes in the world, that's the ashes sprinkling hole. Obviously, of the super famous ones, I mean, the downhill par 3 7th at Pebble is unbelievable. Of the ones I've played, 7 at Pebble was an unbelievable golf hole. 12 at Augusta is an unbelievable golf hole. I almost eagled 13 at Augusta, and I wound up making 7. It's a true story. I hit a shot on 7 at Augusta that is rolling at the pin, and I'm thinking to myself as it's rolling, I hit a wedge about 97 yards, and it is rolling at the pin, and I said out loud, "That's going in," and the caddy said, "No, it's not," and it stopped, and it sat in its place for about what felt like 3 seconds, and then it started rolling backwards. And it rolled all the way back off the green, all the way back down the hill, and all the way into Rays Creek. And I went in the blink of an eye from making a 3 to making a 7 on that hole. So that's one of the great golf holes. I've been all over the world playing golf. It's such a special thing for me, and it is. I have the closest friends I have in this world are my golf group, and some of the best golf holes that I've played in the world. Number 9 at Royal County Down. If there's a better golf hole in the world than the downhill par 4 and 9th at County Down, that's right up there. That whole back 9 at Port Rush was unbelievable. The postage stamp green at Troon, which I played last year, which one of the guys that I played with birdied. My brother-in-law birdied the road hole at St. Andrews on his 50th birthday. That's one of the great memories I'll ever have in my entire life. So golf is, it's in my blood. And so you tell Danny, and Dan knows, he gets it because he loves it too. There are too many holes. Too many holes, not enough time. That's the way I would describe my view of golf.
That is an incredible breakdown. Beyond the 18 at Longshore, I don't know how many I can actually recall in that detail. Mike Greenberg, it's been a great pleasure with you. Check him out on Get Up on Greeny, 12 to 2, Get Up 8 to 10 on ESPN, 10 to 12 on ESPN2. Been a great pleasure. Hopefully I see you out there on the golf course soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care. I'm so glad we got that in. My battery is literally, I was so nervous. My battery, I have 5% left. I kept popping up. So I'm delighted. I didn't want to say like, wrap this. I was about to die. All right. Awesome. Well done. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Take care. Be well. I'll see you around.